In this video, I'm going to show you the one strategy that makes required minimum distributions a complete non-issue in retirement and why waiting until 73 creates tax problems that early action could have avoided. Over the years, I've worked with a lot of clients who proactively manage their retirement accounts before RMDs begin. And here's what I've consistently noticed. When you control your withdrawals in your 60s on your schedule, in your bracket, you can reduce or even eliminate the tax bracket explosions and Medicare premium charges that reactive retirees start dealing with at age 73. That's exactly why I'm making this video today, to show you how strategic early withdrawals and Roth conversions can solve RMD problems before they ever show up and keep you in control of your retirement income. So let's get right into it. Most people think about retirement taxes and they have this picture of a nice, simple glide path. And they think, once the house is paid off and Social Security starts and the kids are gone, taxes should go down, right? Not exactly. For a lot of people, a tax bomb starts quietly building in the background for like 30 or 40 years, and it finally goes off at age 73. And here's what I mean. If you're saving into a 401k or a traditional IRA your entire career, it's very normal for a typical mass affluent family to hit age 73 with $1 million or $2 million or more just in those types of accounts. And, you didn't try to create a tax problem. It just happened throughout the decades of compounding. Once you turn 73, the IRS steps in and says, okay, it's time. Let's start taking money out. And they force you to take out about 3.8 to 4% or of whatever you saved every year. So if you have $1 million in your IRA, that's $38,000 to $40,000 in taxable income that you must add to your tax return. So $2 million, now you're being forced to take $75,000 to $80,000 out, whether you need it or not. And here's the real challenge. Those withdrawals, they don't happen in a vacuum, right? They stack right on top of your Social Security, any pension income, dividends, interest, and suddenly you're getting shoved into tax brackets that you've never been in before. And then what happens? Well, Medicare notices, because higher income pushes you into IRMA brackets. And these are premium surcharges that can add $3,000 to $6,000 a year per person, which means a married couple can end up paying an extra $6,000 to $12,000 every single year just in Medicare premiums. And the reason all this catches people off guard is simple. During your working years, these future tax obligations, they feel invisible. You're deferring taxes, you're saving responsibly, and your balance just keeps growing. But every dollar that you defer today becomes a future obligation, plus growth, plus required withdrawals, plus higher tax brackets, plus Medicare penalties. And retirees consistently underestimate how Social Security interacts with all this. So you've got RMDs that start. Social Security is up to 85% taxable. So in these situations, your income can start to spike overnight. Now, you cross Medicare thresholds that you didn't even know existed, and suddenly you're paying more in taxes and premium at 73 than you ever did at 63. And just so you know that this is not an exaggeration, let me give you a 30-second version of where these numbers come from. So at 73, your RMDs alone often increase your taxable income by $40,000 to $80,000 a year. And that pushes more of your Social Security into the taxable column. And it bumps part of your income into the 22% or 24% or even the 32% tax bracket. And it triggers Medicare IRMA charges. And that can add up to another $6,000 to $12,000 a year per couple, as I mentioned. So when you stack all that together, the higher tax brackets, the taxation of Social Security and the Medicare penalties, many higher balance households, they end up paying $50,000 to $100,000 a year in taxes and premiums that could have been handled more cost effectively with earlier planning. And the worst part is that most of this is completely avoidable with the right strategy. So the RMD, that's required minimum distribution. So it creates predictable problems. But once you understand that there's a strategic control window, you start to see exactly when a little bit of planning can do you the most good. And that window is the period roughly between age 60 and 73. So for a lot of retirees, this is the single most valuable planning opportunity in their entire financial life, because early retirement or even semi-retirement, it often creates a stretch of years where your income drops significantly. So you're not taking Social Security yet, maybe, but you're not forced into RMDs yet either. So you're living off of savings, cash flow, or maybe part-time income. And suddenly you've got this 5-year to maybe 13-year window where you're in more control of your tax bracket than any other time. And here's why that matters. So during this window, you can start to systematically reduce your traditional IRA. So you can take strategic withdrawals, or you can convert small chunks into Roth, or you can do a combination of both. And every dollar that you remove during this period, it shrinks the base the base amount that the IRS is going to use to calculate your RMDs. And for many retirees, using this control window proactively, it can cut RMDs down by 40 to 60%. And that single shift can help you save tens of thousands of dollars every single year once you hit your 70s. But the question is, why is this window more valuable than most any other planning opportunity that you have? Well, because your income is often at its lowest during this time. And that means that you can pull money out or convert money into Roth at tax rates that are far lower than the rates that you're likely to face once Social Security and RMDs begin to start stacking on top of all this other income. So just recently, we retired a guy who worked as a sales rep for a major healthcare supply company, and he went from super high income and paying high taxes each year to that first few years of retirement where he and his wife were paying almost zero taxes because they were able to start spending from their savings for a few years. Now, remember, every dollar that you withdraw or convert during this window is a dollar that never creates a forced distribution later. So it never pushes you into a higher tax bracket, never causes an additional Social Security taxation, and it never triggers Medicare surcharges. And this timing matters because once Social Security starts, that low-income opportunity starts to close quickly. Suddenly, your taxes become far less flexible and your options become limited. So when you miss this window, you end up with reactive strategies. So you're trying to fix the problem after the RMDs have already started. And those reactive strategies, they almost always cost dramatically more in taxes than if you were to simply have taken action earlier. So this strategic window of time that we're talking about, it gives you this window of opportunity. But there's also a withdrawal trick that makes future RMDs completely manageable. And here's how that works. So during your 60s, especially in those early retirement years, your income is often at its lowest point, and that makes it the perfect time to start taking systematic withdrawals from your traditional IRA. Not because you're forced to, but because every dollar, like I said earlier, that you pull out during this low income window, it reduces the balance that the IRS is going to use to calculate your RMDs at 73. And the key is to do it intentionally. So you withdraw up to the top of your current tax bracket without crossing into the next one. So if you're comfortably sitting in the 12% or 22% bracket, you take withdrawals that fill that tax bracket, but you don't spill over into a higher one. And that maximizes how much you can remove each year while keeping your tax rate controlled and predictable. And the beautiful thing is, these voluntary withdrawals, they can fund your actual spending needs in retirement too. So you're not just taking extra money for no reason. You're simply choosing to take it now on your terms instead of waiting until 73 when the IRS forces it out on their terms. So for many retirees, doing this consistently can reduce the age 73 RMDs by $10,000 to $30,000 per year. And that's a huge difference in both taxes and Medicare premiums in your 70s. So why does this method work so much better than waiting for mandatory distributions at 73? Because voluntary withdrawals during your 60s, they often are taxed at 12, 22, maybe even 24%. Those are all very reasonable brackets. But once you hit 73, every dollar of forced RMDs is going to be stacked on top of Social Security, investment income, pension income, and suddenly the same dollars are taxed at 32 or 37%, and they trigger Medicare IRMA penalties. So in other words, you can pay tax on these dollars when your income is low, or you can pay when your income is much more high and maybe even more complicated because of these other things that can happen. And that's the magic of the timing. Strategic withdrawals give you flexibility and control, while mandatory distributions take that flexibility away. By shrinking your traditional IRA balance before age 73, you prevent forced distributions in that tax spike that happens and causes your bracket to go up and your Medicare premiums to be increased. And for many retirees, I've seen this proactive approach save people as much as $100,000 to $300,000 in lifetime taxes compared to waiting and reacting after the fact. And again, this is one of the simplest, cleanest strategies to make RMDs a non-issue, and it works every single year that you use it. Okay, so hopefully you can see how being strategic with your withdrawals really pays off. And if you want a little more help figuring out how this fits into your plan, just click the link in the description. It's a free training that walks you through our full system for optimizing your retirement plan and how we help people to retire with calmness and clarity. So be sure to check that out. Now, another strategy that works beautifully with everything that we've talked about is the partial Roth conversion strategy. And I know you hear a lot about Roth conversions all the time, and I'm not trying to wear the topic out, but when you use conversions the right way, which many times means just doing them gradually during low income years, well, they can be one of the most valuable planning tools. And here's why. When you convert portions of your traditional IRA to a Roth during your 60s, those dollars are permanently removed from the future RMD calculations. So they grow tax-free, they come out tax-free, and they never create any forced income at any age. And the key here is systematic annual conversion. So instead of taking one big tax hit, you fill the current tax bracket each year. So 12%, 22%, maybe 24% without spilling into the higher tax brackets. And so for many people, this ends up being hundreds of thousands of dollars converted before RMDs begin, which can wipe out a large portion of the future forced distributions awaiting us at 73. And this measured year-by-year approach can work better than an all-in-one conversion many times because it keeps your tax rate low, it gives you flexibility to adjust, and just in case your circumstances change over time. Using a steady approach can often get you more total dollars converted over the full window of time, simply because you're filling the brackets efficiently instead of forcing everything into one high tax year. And that's one of the cleanest ways to reduce your RMD problems. Now, Roth conversions, they reduce your future RMDs, but the real efficiency comes from managing your tax brackets. So think about it like this. During your 60s, you simply find the top current tax bracket and you convert or you withdraw up to that line without jumping into the next bracket. And that lets you move money out at 12%, 22%, or 24% instead of paying 32 or 37% later when RMDs stack on top of Social Security. You also want to be aware of how your provisional income is triggering your Social Security taxation, because as you get closer to retirement, taxes, as I mentioned before, they change for you now because you've got things that stack on top of each other, like your Social Security, or if you accidentally jump over and you get a Medicare surcharge. So the goal is to fill those lower tax brackets intentionally each year without making everything more expensive. And done right, this approach often saves people tens of thousands of dollars compared to unmanaged conversions, while also shrinking the IRA efficiently during that time. Now that we talked about managing your tax bracket, let's summarize a framework for reducing your RMDs. Really, just a system that makes all these future distributions for you less disruptive. So let's bring everything together. Okay, so the first step is identifying your optimal control window. So usually somewhere between the age of 60 and 73. And this will be based on what your income looks like. So it's going to look different for everyone. And once you know what that window kind of opens up for you and when it opens up, you can decide exactly when to begin systematic withdrawals or maybe even partial Roth conversions. And from there, you calculate your annual withdrawal or the conversion capacity based on your tax brackets. And so this tells you how much you can move each year without jumping into a higher bracket or triggering unnecessary taxes. You also coordinate everything with your Social Security timing, because delaying or adjusting benefits can extend the length and the effectiveness of the control window. And when you put those pieces together and you stick with the plan, this systematic approach often reduces future RMDs by 50 to 70%. So in practice, it's going to start with running annual tax projections. So this is going to prevent mistakes like bracket jumps or early IRMA charges that can waste some of your best planning years. And you also want to monitor your IRA balance and your projected RMDs so that you can track progress and how it's going and make sure that you're moving the needle in the right direction year after year. Now, what we do in our practice is we just look at the ledger. And if you see here in this image right here, that column is how we can see that this person's going to have more RMDs than they desire to spend, and they'd be a good candidate for the ideas that we're talking about here today. And then as markets move or tax laws shift, you make small adjustments so your strategy stays optimized and efficient. And honestly, this is where working with a tax-focused professional can create a lot of value. So they'll often spot opportunities or timing advantages that DIY planning just completely tend to miss. And when you combine all of this, your control window, bracket management, timing decisions, annual projections, and ongoing adjustments, you create a real simple system that makes RMDs predictable, manageable, and in many cases, almost irrelevant. So now that you understand the one trick that makes RMDs far more manageable and how strategic withdrawals and Roth conversions during the control window can help to prevent those tax pressures that tend to show up at 73 years old and beyond, you can start to use proactive planning to stay in control of your own retirement income. And if you need help with your retirement planning and you want to know how we help people to retire with calmness and clarity, we put a video together that shows you how we do it. The link is below. Be sure to check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.